All right, well, we got a few things cooking today in the Old Man Squad fantasy basketball hopper. One of them is what's coming up in just a matter of mere moments here. So sit tight on that. We'll be visited by Alex Rikleen, so don't go anywhere. The other one, Yahoo's got a new board. So we got a full reshuffle to dive into over the next few days here on the podcast. I'm Dan Besbris. This is Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. You can find me on Twitter at Dan Besbris, and you can follow the network at Old Man Squad, and it'll follow you back. So if nothing else, you get a free follower out of that ordeal. Like, rate, and subscribe as we dive into today. Alex is going to be telling us why we may be looking at the back half of the first round wrong if we've got time. We'll also get into some of his targets, and because he's such a nice young man, a mensch, let's get him in here now. Alex, what's up, dude? How you been?
I've been great. I have an important announcement for the Old Man Squad, which is since we last spoke, I have acquired Mr. Plumlee himself to my aforementioned 20-team dynasty league that I said when we had that conversation. I was like, I'm excited for Plumlee in 18 plus leagues. And I have since made him mine, and this is the audience for that bit of news.
You've made him mine. That's really nice phrasing on that one. So we're about to dive into some of these names near the top of the board and get into some of the other guys you like, time permitting.
But we got to get the SEO up with some Plumlee discussion first.
That's right. We got to get the search engine cooking with Plumlee. Plumlee, he's hitting hard in Google searches these days. So does that mean, and I think we talked about this last time, since you and I spoke, a lot of people have been like, yeah, I feel like Jusuf Nurkic is relatively safe. You're still a little more down on him this year, yeah?
Yeah. He's injury prone. He's in the back half of his career. I think best case, you're looking at a sort of 28 minutes for Nurkic, 20 minutes for Plumlee. Best case for Nurkic, 28 minutes for Nurkic, 20 minutes for Plumlee split. And that's in the games that they're both healthy, and there's no reason to assume Nurkic will be healthy the whole season. And I'm not sure the gap between them in ability is all that big anymore. Their peaks were their Nurkic's peak was way better than Plumlee's peak. Like, I'm not trying to. Weren't they traded for each other?
Possibly. Yeah, maybe. Like when Denver got rid of Nurk to Portland.
I'm pulling this up.
That was to unleash Nikola Jokic, but they did get a big man. You might be right about that, actually. Who went back to
Denver? And that was one of the trades, for Plumlee. Mason Plumlee.
Oh, there you go. Nice.
And that was one of the trades where I thought Woj got it wrong. I thought Woj had a typo because I couldn't believe Nurkic. Nurkic went with the higher pick, not the lower pick. We've gone down a rabbit hole. I'm doing great.
Never has a "how are you doing" turned into so much information on Mason Plumlee, but damn it, I'm here for it. Let's talk about the first round, because you and I, we were DMing on Twitter and getting into what we're going to be talking about on the show. And you were like, wait a minute, Dan, before we get into my guys, I got to tell you about the back half of the first round, because it is like a lot of years, the middle of the second round is the bleep show of the draft. And this year it kind of feels like the back half of the first round is the quote unquote, I don't know, do we call it a poop show, a bleep show? I don't curse much on the show, so I don't know what the right nomenclature is there. But why? So I want to make sure I'm asking you the right question here. Why are we looking at this back half of the first round wrong?
Well, I don't know if everyone else is, but you definitely are. I was listening to your podcast a week or two ago where you went through you were in a mock and you talked about the top 100 picks, and you spent some time on the first half, and I reached out after and I was like, I just think you're looking at this wrong. And I think that, you and I are pretty much agreed that there is a pretty clear top four, and I think most people agree. There's a pretty clear top four. All of them are great. The discussion about them for another day. And there is a shift that happens at 5. And from 5 to really, I think, 11, there is another group of players that where it's not necessarily obvious what to do in that range. But I think that if you sort of puzzle it out and go through the argument of those players, we're talking about Embiid, Kevin Durant, Anthony Davis, Halliburton, Steph Curry. I don't think I'm missing any, am I? Giannis and
Yeah,
Giannis.
I was trying to throw it up on the screen at
Oh, and
exactly the
Tatum.
right moment. There we go. I think that's the
Giannis
point.
and Tatum. I was missing Giannis and Tatum. So we're talking about 7 guys here. And if you kind of puzzle it out with those 7 guys, I actually think there are only 2.5 defensible answers here.
I love that you actually typed that to me, and you're like, there's 2.5 of them, and I was like, I'm not going to even ask him who the half is. I want to hear that in real time. I want to see everybody's reaction. But go through it in whatever order you
Do
like.
you have any hesitation as to, amongst this group, who is going to have the best per game production?
It's got to be Embiid, right?
No hesitation at all, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have any hesitation which member of this group, of the people on the screenshot, ignore Trae Young and Donovan Mitchell because no one's taking them at 5? Of the people in this group, who do you feel most confident in is going to play the most games? Pretty clear answer, right?
Well, normally I think the answer would be Tatum, but then they
Yep.
had the finals run, and I'm not that he played in the Olympics. He was there. The ghost of Jason Tatum was at the Olympics.
He got a nice, refreshing vacation to France, is what I heard.
Yeah, exactly. So that didn't exactly take a lot out of him. But normally the answer is Tatum. I'm a little bit more afraid this year off the finals run. But yes, normally he'd be the guy there.
Okay, so if you're worried about injury risk, then you know, and that's making you hesitate on Joel Embiid. That should also be ruling out everyone in this group except for Tatum and Giannis. Embiid, he missed a lot of games last year.
Yeah.
In the 4 years before that, in the 4 seasons before that, he played 76% of games. Do you know the last time Anthony Davis had a 4-year run where he played 75% of games?
I'm guessing it's in New Orleans or never.
Yeah. New Orleans, yeah. You have to go back to 2014 to 2018. How about Kevin Durant? When did he go on a run where he played 75% of games in 4 years?
Would that be end of Thunder to Warriors tenure?
Correct. So we're talking 2015 to 2019. We're talking about kids who can read now weren't born yet the last time when these streaks ended. Yeah. When these streaks ended, kids who can currently read were not yet born. That's how long it's been since these people reliably played 75% of games. You know, Halliburton, he has played 4 seasons. He played 82% of his games. That's really boosted by 77 games in his sophomore season. And it's boosted by 4 fake games where he was putting in a light jog for the bare minimum 20 minutes so he could maintain his eligibility for the NBA awards.
Yeah, and actually to put an extra feather in your cap on that one, he did like another 2 weeks where he was sort of like it was in between the jog and full bore. So yes.
Right.
Sorry.
So Anthony Davis, you can't count on for a healthy season.
No.
Kevin Durant, you can't count on for a healthy season. Halliburton, you can't count on for a healthy season. Steph Curry, he has hit 80% over the last 4 seasons. But he's also missed at least 18 games in 4 of the last 7 seasons. So, you know, depending on how you look at it there, you're also at pretty big risk of missed games with Steph, who is he's entering his age 36 season, I think.
Yeah, he's old.
So for most of the players that we're considering here, we can tell ourselves that the injury risk to Embiid is higher than the injury risk to the others. But first of all, I think there's sort of, to use a phrase I kind of hate, it's angels dancing on the head of a pin to rank the injury risk of Embiid to Anthony Davis to Kevin Durant to Halliburton to Steph. It's the difference between how injury risky are they is not nearly as great as most people want it to be. And the damage of a major injury to your team, if you play the season 1,000 times, then that's different. But we're only playing one season. You have your one team. We're dealing with an N of one. And we are trying to predict this one data point. And we don't know which one of these random events is going to happen. And if your player happens to get hurt, your team is kind of screwed. There's no avoiding that, whichever player you get.
Yeah.
And all of them are very high risk. And you didn't hesitate to say Embiid was the one with the most upside and the one who's mostly to have who is likely to have the best production when he's on the court.
Do you agree with that on Joel?
Absolutely. I think Joel Embiid is the obvious number 5. I think that if you are afraid, you draft Tatum. If you are ready to commit to a punt, to a punt build, you have some targets that you like, your league, you can justify Giannis. But I think that the only truly logical, when you really puzzle it out, I think the only truly logical options are Embiid or Tatum. And I think you're kind of drafting scared if you take Tatum. I get it. The old adage of you can't win your league in the first round, but you can lose it. Like, there's something to be said for that. And Tatum probably is setting you up better to not lose it. So I get drafting Tatum. I'm not
a big Tatum guy. You know that about me this year. Although I think he probably does a little more with Porzingis out.
Yeah.
But he is likely the lowest. Well, Steph has another shot. He and Steph are probably the lowest per game guys in that group right now.
If you're asking me to rank them per game, I would have them lower. But if you're asking, my actual prediction is that of the 7 of them, he's going to come in 5th, and I just don't know which 2 of them are going to fall below him per game. He's like, Embiid
is going to be ahead, and
I feel comfortable locking Tatum in as the 8th best player in the NBA for the next 5 years. Never quite 5th and never quite 11th.
Yeah, that's fair.
And so I get drafting Tatum, but if you're going to take one of these injury risk guys, I don't understand why you wouldn't take the best one. The actual injury risk to all of them is not different in a way that we can perceive and impact and affect our teams. So it's just, I don't get it. I don't understand why it's not clearly Embiid. And then you can get into the debate because, between KD and Curry and Halliburton, now you're getting into their per game production is going to be a little bit closer. Halliburton is going to be a little bit worse in some things, but he's also maybe the safest health risk. They're all injury risks, but if I did have to pick a health risk, a safest one, it would be him. And you do get the advantage in assists, which is strategic. Maybe you bump him, but I get any order after Embiid. But I don't understand, if you're not taking Embiid 5, I don't understand why you're clicking on someone other than Tatum or Giannis.
So you'll be happy to know that in my show that dropped yesterday morning, Joel Embiid was actually one of my 2 steals of the first round. Now, I don't know if I am as excited at 7 as I was at 9, which I realized 2 slots. What the hell is 2 slots in the first round? But it did seem insane to me at 9. And I think I even put a tweet out that was like, I know I'm going to get 9th pick in every draft this year. And I'm going to end up with so many Joel Embiids that I'm going to be fully puckered the whole
Sounds
day.
awesome. You're going to be nervous, but also sounds awesome.
Because how many times can you get the guy that most people think is going to be the number one player in well, okay, so Wemby, Jokic, Embiid beat those guys per game last year.
He did.
There's very few opportunities that we will have in our lifetimes to draft the number one player in fantasy at 9 who wouldn't be a surprise to be the number one player in fantasy at 9. So I actually am inclined to agree with you. I think a lot of the fear comes from the way we've seen him move since his last injury. And he was actually pretty good in the semifinals and the finals of the Olympics, but he is a lumbering ox right now. And he doesn't look right. Does he look right to you?
I mean, no, and humans aren't supposed to be 7'2" and 300 pounds. Like I you know, but also at his peak health, 7'2" people aren't supposed to be able to move like that. I mean, we're talking about an extreme end of the spectrum, no matter what, and you know, KD always looks great to me, but he barely plays half the season most of the time.
Jimmy Butler keeps falling into the side of his knee. Son of a
gun. So, you know, to me, it's a risk worth taking, especially since as much as this area of the draft does kind of feel like a landmine, I do feel like the second round is better than it's been in a few years.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. By the way, I forgot to do this at the outset. We're talking to Alex Rikleen. You can find him on Twitter at RIKLEEN. I jumped straight into the discussion.
I cut you off with Plumlee.
Yeah. Mason. We got Mason Plumlee. I started to see hearts just floating around my head. I didn't know what to do with myself. Before we get into a little bit more on this same topic, I think there's more to explore here. Alex, what are you working on these days? Let's do some mid-show promo.
You know, I don't have anything out quite yet. My first preseason articles aren't coming out until mid-September. And I'll probably be here by then. So I'm going to, for the last time, I'm going to use my spot to promo someone else. My friend just released a podcast. Go listen to it. It's not about sports. It's called Someone's in Here. It's available anywhere you get podcasts, and it's about pooping. And so go download my friend's podcast, download and subscribe.
That is so much. That is so in my wheelhouse.
Yeah. So go. Someone's in here. It's been a pet project my friend's been working on. And next time I'm here, I promise that I will promo my own fantasy basketball articles.
Oh my God. I'm so excited. I need what I'm gonna dare I ask go farther down that, like, what specifically is it about? Like public restroom use? Because that's what pops
I think the core premise is, you know, we all poop and no one really talks about it.
Well, I talk about it all the time.
Yeah. So
is it,
you know,
it's so I've been led to believe for most of my life that it is sort of an Ashkenazi Jewish thing to talk about pooping a lot.
Yeah.
Because like, when you were younger, did a parent like knock on the door to make sure you were okay when you were going? How's it coming out, baby? Alex, is it coming out okay? Yeah. It's our lives.
Very much.
Someone's in here. That sounds amazing. That sounds absolutely outstanding. Okay. I don't know how I transition. Speaking of pooping, not wanting to poop the bed with your late first round pick. So what do you do if you're beyond, like, because one of the things that sounds like you and I, actually, we agree on this more than I think you feel like, because I do feel like I'm going to end up with Joel Embiid. I'm going to have to force myself not to, because you don't want to end up, like, I have about 10 cash leagues a year. And if I keep ending up with a pick in the 7 through 10 range, most of the time I'm going to end up with Embiid, and I don't want to do that in like 8 of my 10 leagues. What if he goes down? Then, you know, 80% of my teams are just cooked immediately. So you kind of have to have that little, you know, variety in there. If you're not going Embiid, because let's say you are a little bit afraid of him, and you're not going Tatum because you don't like the upside there, and you're not going Giannis because you don't want to. And I get it. You don't have to punt free throws, but you kind of, like Roto, you are immediately. And head to head, Like
It-
Josh and I
It's
have argued
not.
this a little
It's
bit.
not that you have to punt with Giannis. It's that if you're not gonna punt, he's not worth pick 5 or 6. If you're not gonna punt, he's worth pick 8 or 9.
Right. Yeah. Okay, that's a really good way to put it because like the bump there is you want to get him because he's the perfect fit for that build.
Right.
And if you're not going to do that build, then why the hell wouldn't you take a guy who's not going to destroy you in
Right.
one particular category? But it sounds like you and I agree that the rest of these guys do each have like one glaring issue. And then
Mhm.
all of a sudden you hit a point on the board where it's like, oh, there's one glaring issue and another issue. And and that's where the second round kind of kicks in. But it almost feels like those guys, as you mentioned, aren't as terrifying, especially now with the Yahoo board readjustment that I haven't talked about on the podcast yet. But like suddenly the second round, Booker's higher, Edwards and Sabonis in the second round, Harden is much higher, LaMelo Ball is much higher, Holmgren went down. I kudos to Yahoo for this shuffling because it feels like, and I don't know, maybe it'll I'm sure it will shuffle again in 2 weeks or 3 weeks from now. But Alex, I can't remember the last time the second round wasn't the round where we all went, I don't know what the
Yeah.
hell to do here. Like, but it kind of
Right.
feels like right now you could almost take any of these guys, like 13 through 24, and
Yeah.
they're like pretty safe floor with a little bit of upside.
Yeah. I agree with that.
But you kind of like Anthony Edwards a little bit more, not like love him, but you like him more than I do.
That's correct. The two. So, um, I think you kind of asked like 3 questions there.
I
So the
did,
first
yeah. It's
question,
not great podcast hosting.
fine. The first question, if I don't want Embiid, if I don't want or don't get Embiid, and I don't like, and I, um, and Tatum's lack of upside comparatively, for that range, I go with Halliburton. I personally love punting points. Um, I think that the strategic advantage of the potentially leading the league in assists, is really high. And you don't have to punt points, but like his biggest weakness is punting points, and punting points is a thing I like to do. Um, I love the built-in advantage in assists. I think that there are a lot of centers. When you asked me to come up with my list of my guys, 2 of them are late round centers. So I think that there's plenty of center value on the board. And so I'm happy to get a guard early. So there are a couple of reasons where Tyrese Halliburton is, for me, he's the guy who I have at 6. He's the one I'm taking, if not Embiid. The next, in that next range, in that second round, I think there are a lot of options now that we know that Paul George out of um, is out of LA. I feel a bit better about James Harden. And he's obviously not as fit as he once was, and a little bit older, but he's still, I mean, mid to late second, that's pretty good value. Paul George himself, I think that late second is honestly too late. I'm happy to take him with my second pick around the turn. I did take him at 13, 14 in at least one mock that I've done. And then I was in another where he fell to me at like 35, and I was like absolutely thrilled. And Anthony Edwards, so my thing with Anthony Edwards, I've heard you say basically that you look at his stats and you look at his production and you look at where he landed last year, and correct me if I'm mischaracterizing you, but you've said basically, unless I think what you said was, unless his field goal percentage goes up, you don't really see the path for him to become like a clear first round value, especially like one of those like top 10 picks.
Correct. Yeah, because he's already at 20 shots. I'm struggling to see where the next leap comes for him.
I think that's a mindset that gets other people and you sometimes into trouble. That mindset, that way of talking about a player is I remember specifically why you missed out on Jaylen Brown's breakout season a couple years ago. Is because you and I were having a conversation about Jaylen Brown, and I remember you going through his stats and saying, I don't see where he improves here. And it wasn't any complaint about Jaylen the player or the role, etc. And there were a little bit of improvements across the board. My thing with Anthony Edwards is poll, basketball writers, poll fans. Is Anthony Edwards a top 15 basketball player? Is he a top 10 basketball player? Everyone's going to say top 15. A lot of people are going to say top 10, right?
Yes.
Most of the time throughout, the 15-ish years we've been doing this, top 10 basketball players are top 10 to 15 fantasy players. Right?
Yeah, but where is it? I still, it's got to be like, what, is he going to get more than 20 shots a game?
It just happens, man. I don't know how it happens. Marginal improvement somewhere. Maybe it's a 2/10 of a steal and 2/10 of a block and a third of a rebound and a third of an assist. But
doesn't that get him from where he was 37 last year? Doesn't that get him from 37 to like 24 instead of 12 or something like that?
So that's the argument. I don't have Anthony Edwards in my top 15 right now. He's not there for me. And I haven't had to publish an official ranks yet. And he's been the top name in my honorable mention for everything I've done. So I've only had to do I think the deepest I've had to actually publish was 12, and he was the top name in my honorable mention. And what I said about Anthony Edwards and what I stand by is I don't know how he gets there, but a player this good at basketball is going to be a top 15 and probably a top 10 fantasy player sooner rather than later. I don't know if it happens this year or next year or maybe in 3 years. I'm having some of the same difficulties you have when you look at the spreadsheet. And it's the reason why I'm not already saying, yeah, draft him at 15. But if we were making a bet right now, I would put much more money than I'm usually willing to put on a bet that Anthony Edwards will be a top 15 fantasy player within the next 3 seasons, if not the next one. It's just he's too good not to. The way basketball works, the way fantasy basketball works is when a player is that good, the stats follow. They just do. It just happens. I don't know why.
I'm not saying it's impossible for him to go from a 46% field goal guy to 50, because that's a big way. That's a big move for him. I just find it hard to see. And so I think maybe more my issue here was like a guy that you're hoping makes that jump. Wouldn't it be nice to be able to draft them like somewhere in between where they were last year and where you want them to be, as opposed to where you want them to be, which is kind of what he was when his pre-rank was 10. I don't mind him as much with a pre-rank of 16. That's what the board, they just dropped him down by 6 slots. I actually think he's a relatively safe second round pick, because even if his per game is 30 something, and again, predicting health is tough, but he does have the body of someone who's going to be able to withstand an NBA season. He's strong. He's built like a truck. He's got that kind of LeBron shape to him. So I think we can get these wrong and horrible things happen, knock on wood, to everybody. But like, if you were betting on who plays more games between Anthony Edwards and Anthony Davis, 100% of people Anthony Edwards. But at 10, it's like, this is where we want him to be. We can is there any universe where he got beyond 10? I think even you would have to say 0 on that one.
I have a hard time seeing how he does it this season. It feels too much. It feels like too big a jump from where he was too fast. But
he is good.
And even at 16, there's not a lot of room for upside. I'd rather, I know the difference between 16 and like 18 to 20 isn't big. But like, it's really probably in the 18 to 20 range where I start to be like, okay, I'm drafting him where the downside doesn't feel all that high. I'm getting someone who, as you said, likely to play a ton of games. His per game floor is probably,
40.
I think it's higher than that. I think his per game floor is, 30, 30, maybe 35. I think it's
not ruining your team in the second round is okay.
Yeah, and I do think there is a ceiling, as I said, that he gets all the way up to first round value this year. And if he doesn't this year, I do think it happens next year because players this good, it usually happens. I don't know how it happens.
I love that. Talking to fellow old man enthusiast Rikleen at Rikleen on Twitter. We're running out of time, so I'm going to ask you to lightning round it a little bit for me here. You mentioned some late centers you like. Who is your short list? Just a couple of names before I let you go of guys you're looking at this season so far.
So the two late centers who were on my list are Mitch Robinson and Derek Lively. Mitchell Robinson, I haven't seen. Where is he on Yahoo's?
I think he went up. He's 116 now. Oh, he went way down, actually, much to your delight. He went from 99 down to 116.
What are we doing here? I feel like I'm on crazy pills. I'm looking at his basketball monster page. All right, we've got a guy who finished, who last year was injured and only played 31 games. The 3 seasons before that, he finished 79th, 89th, and 52nd. I mean, yes, he's an injury risk, absolutely. But the backup center is gone now, and he is likely to do roughly top 100 production per game when he's there. Why is he falling so much? If he's healthy when he's got enough health risks that if he's injured on draft day, if he's he's unlikely to play on opening night, then I'm out. But assuming he's healthy when we're drafting, this is a smashing value. The backup center who is taking minutes from him is gone.
Yeah, the backup
center, and no one came in to replace him. Isn't the backup center still like it's still Jericho Sims, isn't it? Yeah.
I think so.
Even if you don't want to play him a ton of minutes, Precious Achiuwa is just not up to 20 to 30 minutes a game. Precious Achiuwa is not good enough for that.
No, and there's no rim protection there either.
Yeah, I don't. If he's healthy with the roster they currently have, I don't see how they avoid getting him back to the 27 minutes he was doing when he was an easy top 100 player. He's not a ton of points, but a lot of rebounds and a lot of blocks and great field goal percentage. He's a limited player. He is what he is. But we're talking about, a person whose ADP is so low that you can get him with one of your last picks. I feel like I'm on crazy pills that he's dropping.
Yeah, I'm not fighting with you on that one, especially now at 116. 17 slots is a pretty good drop off as well. Like that, you're a round and a half later. You create a lot of wiggle room because guys going after about pick 105 typically are guys that aren't even starters. This is a starter.
And the mocks I've been in, he's lasted even longer than that. I haven't done a mock on Yahoo. All the mocks I've done so far have been on Fantrax.
Yeah, he does tend to fall. And some of it's the injury risk, and some of it's the fact that for some reason the dude shot 40% at the free throw. That Andre Drummond, prime Andre Drummond level. But I kind of hope that comes back to like 49, which I know still sounds truly awful, but like 40% is backbreakingly bad.
Yeah.
And 50 with a couple of free throws is somehow.
But it is on a low volume. If you can actually, it's one of those deceptive ones where because the volume is so low, if you have a volume good free throw shooter, you actually can come back from it. It's not going to help, but it actually is overcomable.
Yes. Give me one more before I let you go, because you got a busy day. Kid in school for only a couple of hours. You got to make the most of that time.
Yeah. So the other one is Lively right there on the top of your screen. You know, we just saw this guy as a rookie perform in the playoffs. He was one of the more impactful players. Was he the third best Maverick in the finals? Like maybe.
Yeah.
PJ Washington had that one game where he really went off, but like in the series on the whole, was Derek Lively maybe their third best player as a rookie? And I understand the like I liked Derek. I liked Daniel Gafford too when he was in Washington, but I just simply do not believe that he is better than Lively. And I think that what we saw during the playoffs was Jason Kidd telling us that he sees it, that he understands that Derek Lively is already better than Gafford, and that even if Gafford is the nominal starter, Lively could easily hit the 23.5 minutes that he averaged last season, where he ended up with a 120 rank. So if he was a rookie at 23 and a half minutes, you would got to, rookies usually, not always, but usually improve. And usually someone who is the third best player on a finals team comes back and plays more than 23 and a half minutes the following season. If either one of those things is the case, then he will be a value at 116 when he was 120th in value last season. Like, it only takes one of those for his value to improve. I would assume both of those things will happen. I would expect that he's going to finish the season around, if not much above the top 100 line, and he's going meaningfully later than that. I think that he's a great value. A similar profile stat wise to Mitch Robinson. He's got weaknesses. It's not a perfect profile by any means, but I think he's a clear value, especially at the part of the draft that he's going in.
Well, as delighted as you were that Mitchell Robinson slipped 17 slots, Derek Lively actually went up 14 in the last reshuffle. So you got to go
not
get
high enough though.
A round earlier, but as you're saying, not high enough. Alex, thank you so much for giving a few extra minutes here to throw a couple of late centers in. That was awesome. This is exactly what I was hoping for. And I love presenting new ways to look at especially these guys that are the foundational pieces for teams. It's so critical because if you don't want your season to end quickly, you have these options. They're not fun. But what if you can get the number one guy in fantasy at frickin' pick 9 this year? There's just, I don't know, there's a lot to go on there. Alex Rikleen, check out Someone's in Here.
I'll be guesting on one of the episodes, not one of the ones that's out yet. He interviewed me to talk about infant poop.
Oh yeah. Oh, holler. Please pass along my contact information. I have I got irritable bowel. My older kid has and this is going on the podcast, by the way. My older kid had intense constipation. My younger kid is what they call a super pooper because he poops 4 times a day, even still, and he's 4.5 years old. We are a rectally fixated household, so I cannot wait to take in this podcast. And I've definitely yelled those 3 words at someone in random public restrooms because when you have IBS, oftentimes you can't make it home. Sometimes you just got to go at like whatever gas station or fast food joint is along the way. Not Alex's pod specifically, but it sounds outstanding. Your stuff, as you mentioned, will be dropping in September. I think last time you were on the show, you were like, I'm still working on the same thing. Rikleen on social media. Go follow him immediately. Alex, thank you so much, my man.
See ya.
God, I love that dude, man. God, I love those chats with Alex. How many times has he been on the new pod? Is that the 3rd one? been trying to keep track of how often particular guests are on the show. I think that's appearance number 3 for Alex, and there'll be many. I just so he and I we coincide. And intersect is the word I was looking for that I failed to come up with the first time. In a lot of the ways we look at a fantasy board, but he sees certain things differently, and he articulates them in a way that I don't, which for me is both illuminating and also extremely entertaining. Tend to laugh my tail off. And today, of course, bringing up a poop podcast is like, that's the way to my heart. You can talk about Al Horford all you want, but if you really want to get to my heart, you talk about going to the toilet. It's my existence. I'm surrounded by it. I've been surrounded by it my whole life. Anyway, so that's the top of the board. Alex giving a couple of his guys towards the end of it. That was Derek Lively and Mitchell Robinson, a couple of centers going late right now, and Robinson very late after the last board reshuffling. Quick recap on what Alex was talking about near the top. You got the first 4 that most people are fairly locked in on. Luka Doncic's playoff schedule does creep in as a bit of an issue, but it doesn't seem like it's moved his number off all that much. After 4, your choices are Embiid if you want to shoot upside, Giannis if you're punting, Tatum if you want to go ultra safe. That was the argument from Alex, and it's hard to argue against it because Anthony Davis, yeah, he is probably about as injury prone as Joel Embiid. I would argue just a sliver, a tiny bit less, because a lot of what we saw from AD was you could tie directly to the bubble playoff run and then having no off season. And he was just broken for like 2 years after that. But he was really healthy this last season. And when AD is healthy, the game played number is higher than Embiid. And that to me is like sort of the separation there, where over the last 4 years, AD had these 2 seasons where he basically didn't play. And then there were a couple seasons where he did. And so it was this like the polar extremes, barely played a bunch. Embiid was like somewhere in that, played sort of kind of most all of them other than this last one. Kevin Durant, in my eyes, maybe a little bit more fluky. It wasn't like usually with Embiid where the body just exploded on him. KD, it did feel like a lot. And he had that famous interview where Durant was like, I got to stop letting dudes fall into my leg, which is hard. You're 7 feet tall. Your legs are like 6'9" of that 7 feet. Just this long, spindly thing that someone's going to bang into that. So it's, it's fluky, but it's also not at the same time. Halliburton, who I think per game is going to be a bit lower than most this year, in my eyes, kind of parallels Tatum a little bit in probably does make it through the year, probably more in that, 10 to 15 to 18, 10 to 18 range in per game stuff, but younger. I mean, that's the end of it. Like Halliburton's just way younger than a lot of these dudes we were just talking about. So it's so interesting to look at the top of the board and the issues that each of those guys has. What do you do? How do you overcome it? What's the difference between Roto head to head? Is there a games cap on your league? All these things factor into it, and you have to assess them when you're making that call. Thank you once again to Alex for jumping on with us. Again, it's Rikleen. And thank you to you guys. I said this on yesterday afternoon's show. I'm blown away. Yesterday was our biggest day of growth for Old Man Squad in the very brief existence of the network. On YouTube in particular, jumped by like almost 100 subs in one day, which, I mean, just like my head explodes. It allowed us to monetize things, so commercials are going to start popping up. I know you guys are going to hate that, but, it's good for me. And it's good for the network. It's good for the YouTube page. More folks are finding the traditional pods, and that's all because of you guys. So please do continue to click like on everything you're watching. Please rate if you're listening on Apple or Spotify. Please subscribe no matter how you're taking in the content. That is how we continue to grow. I got a lot to do on Twitter today. We got a dog's vet appointment today. I got a second show coming this afternoon. We're going to break down a chunk, probably the top 25 on the brand new Yahoo board. Got to dive into that. The board reshuffling is priority number 1. And you got to hear a little bit of it from Alex on this one. I am Dan Vespers for Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. At Dan Vespers on Twitter, at Old Man Squad, OldMansquad, all one word over on the socials. That one will follow you back. Have a great few hours. We'll talk to you this afternoon. So long for now.